Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astuma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy and vigor. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So, good evening. This is Vedanta Series Question Answer for spiritual seekers. Sometimes there are questions and answers from a principal point of view or an intellectual point of view. But really, the real practice in spirituality is the most important section. It's a bit like saying that we don't have to go to New York on a visit. We can simply rely on YouTube videos or National Geographic or some kind of pictures, and then we know everything. That's not the case. It's not the case. So the only way we get any knowledge is from direct experience. What we call scripture is a record of somebody's direct experience, not a series of facts and figures that allow us to formulate kind of narrow rules and regulations that become sectarian. And so I'm going to pause my microphone or stop my microphone so that you have an opportunity to formulate and ask some questions.
So the question is, the world we live in, do we create it?
Okay. So then you had the second part, yes?
Yes, which is how to find, I mean, I know about self-love and it's very deep as well and stuff. To find home within yourself and then accept everything else as complementary.
Okay, so let me try to deal with the first part of your question about creating reality. What we assess to be our reality is really a small sphere of activity with an identity at the center and setting up a series of actions and reactions that help survival. Naturally, we have to survive. The world has a fundamental desire not only to survive but to thrive. So inwardly, we all have a drive toward perfection. And where does this drive come from? Well, it must come from our own inner nature. If we would want a final outcome that is perfection, then there is no other way except to say that we ourselves must be perfect, even though it doesn't look like that. So we have to sort out what is perfect, what is imperfect. This process is called discrimination, discernment. It's also related to the second part of your question. So the first key to success in spiritual life, if you wish to call it this, or unfolding this divinity from within, will be to have a discerning mind. That is why a key prayer derived from peace prayers of the Upanishads will tell us, lead us from the unreal to the real. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotir gamaya, mrityo amritam gamaya. Lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. So what is darkness? Darkness, of course, represents the fact I cannot see. It looks as if I can see, but I cannot see the whole picture. The totality is hidden from me. And when I can catch the totality, then I have some idea of what holism is and what perfection is. Perfection means there can be no blemish whatsoever. There can be no two. And so philosophically, this is called Advaita non-dualism. Then why do we live in this world? And why do we have all the adventures that we have related to the so-called myself? What we call jiva. There's a great confusion often between what is Atman and what is jiva. Atman is that final datum when you explore deeply within, and whatever survives there, that doesn't change, that remains undivided, whose consciousness itself is unflickering, who is clearly not born, nor does it live, nor does it die in a conventional sense. This we call Atman, simply self. What is Jiva? Jiva means soul. But is the Atman not a soul? No. Atman is spirit, pure spirit. And if it's pure spirit, it's boundless. That means it's not individual at all. It must be a totality. It must be the same spirit that is there in the cosmos. But Jiva is something different. Jiva means that internal self has somehow identified itself with a connecting link, a kind of sense of individuality that postures itself in a survival mode, and that has the capacity to use a current called thought. And thought is a creative entity. Thought is subtle energy. Subtle energy, or energy of any kind, we call prana. All prana is subtle because we only see the effects of it. We don't see the actual energy. We can see a spark in an electrical current. We can see a light bulb manifesting light. But actually, what is electricity itself? We know electrons flow. But electrons have to have some kind of relationship also, atomic relationship. And these are all unseen to the eyes. So that several hundred years ago or so, nobody would have even suggested that there were such things as electrons or subatomic particles. The ancient Greeks understood it. Democritus had the atomic theory. But in a few hundred years ago, everybody said, no, that's ancient Greek history. We won't adopt that antiquated idea at all. We'll have another idea, and that is the ancient idea of ether. So that bodies have to communicate through a field or through some kind of medium. And so that's okay. Thought itself cannot travel in the sense that there is only, as you say, one cosmic mind, one broadcasting station, and you and I have a receiving station that is part of the jiva. Like a radio broadcast where the electromagnetic wave system accommodates broadcast waves at different frequencies, and we tune into those frequencies, and then we catch the broadcast, which is identical at both ends. It's identical at the broadcasting end as it is at the receiving end. An absolute copy, exact copy. Why does it happen so instantaneously? Because we don't have to go to the broadcasting station. What we catch is here and is now. We simply tune into it. If we don't tune into the right wavelength, we only get disturbances and howling noises. If we tune into the correct wavelength, then we get access to the broadcast. We may have to do a little refinement in tuning. This process of tuning is like the mental process of taking the gear stick of the attention, a kind of probing mechanism, to discover what is there and tune into the reality. Are we not living in a reality now? Yes. Do not have a real identity as an individual? Well, yes, for passport purposes. But beyond passport purposes and the so-called normal functioning, where we have to eat and drink and sleep and do all those things, but we're only doing it in a certain field or a certain state of consciousness. Beyond that state of consciousness, other things operate. In a dream, there's no difference between the perceiver and the perceived. And what we had as an ego in the waking state is now split up into various exotic people, places, and events called dream. And the whole thing disappears all of a sudden. And a kind of peace comes on. So 3 states of consciousness were known and observed, and you also can observe them. The only thing is we don't really pay much attention to the 2 states which are called dream and dreamless sleep. So where does this waking state come from that is comprised of our so-called individual experience, our field of activity? It must come from only one source, from consciousness itself. And all the waves that manifest there must come through a creative cosmic mind. So that means then that when we stand apart from the 3 states of consciousness, there is a thinker, a knower, a witness. And the thinker, the process of the thought is infallible. It will reach its end until suitably neutralized by a doubt or a fear, or a change in course, or a change in intention, or a new resolve. Otherwise, it has to carry through. How does it carry through? Well, the cosmic mind, it has a creative capacity because it manifests various angels. These are not figures with wings. These are not extra cosmic beings that float around in the sky. These are fundamental, subtle, energetic forces. And these combine and recombine in various combinations, in various distinct proportions, until they condense as the world around us. Does it happen for every thought? Well, yes, every thought that carries through, that doesn't get cancelled or neutralized. So if you think that you are a worthless person, you will be a worthless person. If you fear that there are troubles on the horizon, if you fear that every moment some disaster is going to happen, if you think that people are untrustworthy, and that is your normal condition of thinking, then you will create a distrustful world. And at every level, so that when you eat food, the stomach says, I don't trust it. Then you get disease. It carries through to the psychophysical in every single way, at every single corner, all pervading. So this thought is a creative process. And when we're not generally aware of it, we forget that we are creating our own environment. And that's the fact of it. Now, what draws things toward us is when thought repeatedly settles on a habit level, we call this the unconscious mind, subconscious mind, there it has a pulling power, a suction from there. It draws things in toward itself. And so, how to create a better world really depends on how we reform, how we are able to revise and recreate, if you will, the basic tendencies within our unconscious mind. There's no direct access to it. The only thing we can do is we can only do it through the conscious mind, through conscious thought. Knowing that a current arrives at this point called individual mind, we take this and we steer it in a chosen direction. We let it glide in a certain direction. We elevate it. We make it full of joy and glory. We make it full of goodness and truth and harmony. And we then create a harmonious condition. But to do that, the subconscious mind has to be harmonious. Because if we are not alert, all of a sudden an association, a trigger, a tendency will come up from the subconscious area and will have its play, and it will have its play sometimes in the conscious mind, but otherwise it will remain there, and before we know it, something surfaces. And that, like a magnet, will collect associated ideas, and with these associated ideas, we then are mobilized into actions which we might regret later. Let us take, for example, a reaction of anger, or a reaction of criticism, or a reaction of feeling rejected. All of these are all geared to make your unconscious mind in the red, a deficit. We want it in the black. If it was a bank account, we would want it to have a healthy bank balance. How to create this healthy bank balance? This is called repeated practice, sadhana, and it starts off with discernment. We have to be discerning enough to be able to observe what is going on at any moment in our own mental field, assess it nicely, and make a decision whether it's worthwhile, whether it's a good action, whether it's a good reaction. And then reformulate it, given that we have a flow called time available to us. And put something chosen, something that is uplifting, for the good of all, for everybody. If we are able to do this repeatedly and habitually, there will be no wars. There will be no wars on a national level, and there will be no wars on a domestic level either. We'll have no quarrel with colleagues. We'll have no difficulty with other people. We'll have a fresh idea about things. We'll have revalued everything. But it requires practice. Practice of discrimination, discernment, and practice of which will result in detachment. These two things are necessary. What do we mean by detachment? It means when we value things correctly and put things in their correct perspective, we value things in a more truthful, honest way. When we do that, automatically we leave off the old things. We outgrow the old things. As a child, we used to run around in oversized boots in the mud. We used to roll around. Actually, in adulthood, some of us still do it and enjoy it. Never mind. We do things, childish things perhaps, that we would not normally dream of doing in adulthood. We have outgrown these childish ways. These many, many childish ways are there entrenched in the unconscious mind. A kind of memory bank of experiences that remains without any direction or control. They're simply there. Naturally, when the stimulus is there, they resurface. And then they go back again with new experiences. Every experience you have, every thought that you have, gets its imprint. We call these imprints samskaras. These samskaras are largely of a kind which, if not controlled, will draw in negativity, concern, worry, doubt, fear, distrust, temptation. And so we have to re-educate this mind, not directly, but taking some conscious activity, not just when we notice deleterious thoughts arising, but we have to take preventative medicine. We have to saturate the mind with the higher values from the start. When we wake up, we can assert strong, true, wise, full, free, truth, beauty, goodness, love, harmony, like that. You repeat a mantra if you have a mantra. You do some japa, prayer, meditation. Saturate the mind with the highest possible values and noble thoughts that humanity can produce, with a model in front of you of an ideal who managed to do this in their own life. Sages, saints, mystics, holy people. Using that, you associate it and join it with holy scenes, pilgrimages, beautiful scenes that we find in their natural environments, such as mountains and rivers and forests. experiences that gave you huge delight, that left you without a sense of judgment or criticism, that left you with a state of wonder, adoration, and thankfulness. And with that storehouse, you now start remodeling this suction pulling power that is called the unconscious. Then with all of this equipment, with this strategy, with this revised way of thinking, with a sense of revaluing everything and attributing everything to its real owner and author, namely that author, that supreme self, cosmic self that stands behind everything. Having done that, our world becomes better and the world around us becomes better. How do we deal then with our relative world from there on? This is the second part of your question. How do we behave normally? Well, there is the relative world that we have to sport in. And the only way to make any sense of it is as a divine play. Otherwise, nothing makes sense. It's a play of waves, dancing atoms, dancing waves at different frequencies, going here and there, back and forth. Seeing it in this way and getting used to seeing it in this way, we then can deal naturally with the world in front in a wiser way, in a more discerning way, in a measured way, but also in a functionally useful way. We become useful. If we are sitting all the time complaining and saying, poor me, poor me, poor me, without saying, what a glory, what a glory, what a glory, we should let this what a glory prevail. But unfortunately, what a pity prevails. Don't be surprised if in front of you is a piteous world. So the world in front we deal with in an appropriate way, natural way. It doesn't mean to say that it is unreal. No. We have to eat, we have to drink, we have to sleep. What about human relationships? They become all revised and revalued. Instead of seeing a human there, of course, with the human element there, and having compassion for the human element, that is elevating our valuation of things to the noblest heights of love and compassion. But this is not a limited kind of love. We have to learn to expand the heart. And as soon as we feel that the heart is expanded fully, we realize, no, it actually can expand much more. And when it expands much more, it embraces not only our own environment, but embraces all existence. That generosity of spirit. And in humans, it's very difficult to find. And that is why of all the numbers of people who take up the spiritual course and make a resolve to change, of all of these, proportionately, very few will make it. Very few will realize the truth. Thousands and thousands and thousands of seekers. Only a few will make it. Why is that? Is this an encouragement to you? Or is this statement made to discourage you? No, it is actually made to encourage you because the possibility is there for everyone. One person having done it, everybody can do it. One person becoming competent in a sport or an art or a science, it means everybody can do it. We have an infinite capacity within us that can unfold a potential that is largely unused, untapped. And we're not seeing it necessarily. And why are we not seeing it? Because our attention is driven toward all just the superficial things. The superficial things that we deal with, and we treat this world as a threat, possibly, or as a struggle. And we do this, the same thing, the same approach we use in spiritual life. We treat spiritual life in the beginning as a struggle, as a chore, as a difficulty. But it's the same with any discipline. If you want to build up muscles, you start with some small weights. You build up a little bit. and a little bit more, you increase the weights. Eventually you can manage some things that you never suspected you could in the beginning. You push yourself. This is what sports people do all the time. Certain personalities are geared toward painful discipline, with the idea of winning a marathon, or climbing a mountain, or going to the depths of the ocean. But all this effort, won't you gather it all? Won't you try to explore the heights of your own individuality? Won't you decide to explore the depths of your own inner being, to find out the immortal component, as it were, that root, that blissful base? What is the encouragement and the reward? Well, are you blissful? And if you're blissful, we'll leave you alone. Nothing more to say, nothing more to do. But if you're not fully blissful and joyous in every moment, then a little struggle has to be undergone initially, because change is difficult for everybody. How to reform the entire habit level, otherwise called the unconscious mind, is not an easy task. And so if we don't approach it in the right way, we'll add to its negativity. Excuse me. If you think that it is a difficulty and you want to give it up straight away, and you want to relax and take an easier path that is so short term that you have missed the point, because you haven't got the bliss, you've only got pain. It looks like happiness. In Buddhism, there's a very famous example of our mindset, our interesting and awkward mindset. It's to do with a man who was chased by a tiger, and he comes to a precipice and he's no way out. And so he decides he's going to climb down. And as he does it, he looks down in the valley and sees there's another tiger looking up longingly at him, smacking his lips and thinking, here's a nice meal coming my way. What to do? What to do? He has no choice. He has to climb over the precipice, and he manages to hold on to a root. And as he holds on to the root, he managed to observe tiger above, tiger below. And as long as he holds on to the root, maybe they'll go away. But then he sees a rat, and the rat is gnawing through the root. All of a sudden, to his left, he sees a beautiful strawberry and forgets everything and says, oh, what a beautiful strawberry. This is the mindset that most of us have. It's a wonderful story illustrating how our attention can easily be dissuaded from a mature course of action, a much more steady, stable, and blissful outcome. We forget it. Why do we forget it? It's because we cannot forget, or we find it difficult to forget, that this world, which is a relative reality, relative means it only exists relative to the sense organs, or it only exists relative to my experience. And so everything depends on that. And our mistake is that we think it will last forever, and it is the only significant and important thing that we have. And then everything within us is significant and important, including relationships, including properties, assets, including how our body looks and feels, including how we want to saturate the mind with memories or with repetition of memories of pleasures that for the time being distracted our attention away from difficulties and problems. A child falls down and cries, and given an ice cream, immediately forgets the cuts on the knees and the blood and the painful experience of falling on the gravel. Immediately the attention turns to the ice cream. Then in our adulthood, some tragedy occurs, a fall from grace, let us call it. And immediately they'll resort to a tub of ice cream. We can see it on the movies, American movies, who serve things in king-size proportions. So some relationship broke up, somebody's heart sore, tub of ice cream comes out with tissues, wiping tears away, and to add to it, a sad movie is played, and the whole thing is consumed. And it seems to be very satisfying, but it's not. Anybody who tried it would tell you it's not. It's not going to solve the problem. What is the problem? Maybe I didn't value things in a proper way. Maybe it was not so much about a broken relationship as it was about my discomfort, an egoistic position that says, I am suffering. Never mind about the other person. What is true love? True love means I don't care what you think of me. I don't care how you treat me. It's irrelevant. A heart that expands with love, embraces every being, is irresistible. How to expand the heart beyond the scope of human relationships and feelings. How to gather all that energy that is used in wasteful ways and direct it usefully, constructively for the good of all, with the generosity of spirit, making the ego an open channel for divine grace to flow everywhere to everyone. Such people are rare. However, everyone has the potentiality to do it. Potential is there within you. Potential is there within everybody. And don't be impatient about it. A flower, you don't have to say, from the time it is planted as a seed, it will instantly grow. No, it won't. It depends on response to seasons. It depends on nutrients. It depends on water. It depends on air. It depends on sunshine. But more than that, inside itself is the formula for growth. It knows how to grow from within. It does it. So inside of us is the exact formula for our growth. The only thing we have to do is to make sure that we put a good fence around it, make sure that we protect the seed of our growth, and make sure that we grow progressively in good time, with great patience, with great care, with great persistence, with great dedication, using the nurturing environment and resources that are all around us, not complaining. Why is the road strewn with thorns? No, put some tough shoes on. Why is the road full of potholes? No, take a four-wheel drive. Don't blame anything. Blaming, as I may have mentioned last night, is something like projection. I carelessly walk past a table, bang my leg, and I say, stupid table. The table is neither stupid nor intelligent, but I'd rather do that than blame myself. So putting things carefully in perspective and carrying on and expecting a fall, expecting that you have some progress and some elements of regression, expecting that things will not always be smooth. What use is it if things are smooth? If things are smooth, then the end is there and it's easy. No struggle necessary. But also, of course, when we catch hold of the right formula, we see that it is also easy and natural. We can simply glide across the relative existence borders to the absolute, glide across to blissful base. We can do that as we want. Why not? It is our own nature. We can do it in the middle of Grafton Street, surrounded by noise and crowds, as much as we can do it in the mountains or by the lakes of Glendalough. We don't require an environment specific for it. But initially, environments which are conducive to peace of mind and that kind of pleasure that only nature can offer, where we stand in a breathless moment and appreciate the beauty and harmony of the current moment. At those times, two things can happen. A deposited memory can be there, which we can recall later in a useful way, And use that memory to elevate the mind. That's the one use. The other use is it serves. It serves as an initial movement until we get used to the idea that not only can I see this harmony and this peace and this joy in a mountain scenery, I can see it in a person. I can see it in a spider. I can see it in any kind of thing that I thought previously was unpleasant. I can see it equally everywhere. When I get to that stage and make that habitual, then I have nothing more to do because the rest is done by divine grace. Divine grace will then saturate my being and complete the journey for me. All I have to do is an initial step forward. My job is very small, but the divine grace organizes itself and carries me. The wind of God's grace is ever blowing. We have but to set the sail, says Ram Krishna. What a beautiful, beautiful idea, beautiful concept. Just simply open ourselves. It means open the heart. When we open the heart, divine grace floods in. We wait for that moment with great joy and expectation. And when that moment comes, we feel tangibly being filled up, being saturated and overflowing with pure love. That's the kind of love we want, surely. So I hope I answered these two questions anyway.
Yes, I realized Swamiji that, like, for example, yesterday, after the talk you gave, I realized somehow, I don't know, I felt something that activated. And I literally started saying things very practically without realizing. Like, for example, like in the bathroom, for example, there's a handle to open a drawer, and I realized that could be used to put a towel in. So things like that. And then I got myself saying, oh, this is very practical. And then I realized that I was switching into something that was different to what I previously knew. And then when I had this realization, I felt like when a child discovers something for the first time and wants to show the dad or the mom and wants to say, Dad, look what I discovered. And then suddenly I thought Swamiji. And I said, this has been Swamiji, I need to tell him. So I discovered that I actually really, really liked that way of thinking because it made my life very easy. Instead of, lots of sorts of, applications that you create and stuff. But for example, this morning, like I used to do a routine waking up at 5:30, and then I do meditation and yoga, and I'm trying to change all that routine to like gain stability and practice at the same time and everything. But this morning, although yesterday, and I had then a dream which was like purging, so it was very like connected and spiritual and everything. But then this morning, it was very difficult for me to connect 100%. And for example, meditate or do yoga. It's like my body didn't want to do yoga or like connect 100% to it. So I don't know if it's a process itself. Like for example, let's say an awakening or something. But it got my attention that I couldn't, focus as much. Although I actually felt very it was a really big realization. So I don't know if that has to do something with like having our minds and everything, or just some kind of process to go through.
Well, I mean, when there is a shift in the mind anyway, there's also a shift in our habits. And very often things become clearer when we look at everything from different angles and different perspectives. First of all, when we talk about meditation, we have to be quite sure that we have the right meditation process, because what I find is that people have some misunderstandings about meditation. And when we do a meditation workshop, these these misunderstandings arise. When we do a meditation workshop, the first thing I do is issue a questionnaire. And the questionnaire is to try to find out what are the various difficulties in the meditation process for you. Now, there are different kinds of meditation, but the way we would use meditation is we want it to be used as a way of purifying the mind so that an internal discovery happens. And so there are step-by-step processes. And of course, our standard textbook on meditation that everybody uses will have to be the Patanjali Yoga Sutras with the 8 steps toward it, like 8 rungs of a ladder. Broadly speaking, every meditation is like that. The one thing about Raja Yoga, or the path of meditation, is all the other yogas will have to use it. It's common to all the yogas. And that is why, in fact, it's called a royal path, because you're dealing with the queen bee of the senses, namely the mind itself. And it doesn't matter if you are a devotee, that is, if you have great love of a personal ideal, or if you are following the path of discernment and catching the flow, the divine flow, the infinite invisible that flows through all things, like a current flowing through adapters, or if you are an active doing person where you see that flow flowing through your own hands, and you work in such a way that there is no mental disturbance, that is equanimity of mind and mindfulness in every action. And if you add to it that you're doing every action for the love of a God, then that gives a sweet dimension to Karma Yoga. But whatever it is, there must be a moment where you access internal silence. And so I find there's great misunderstandings about what we call meditation. So if you're following the step-by-step process in meditation, preferably guided by a guru, then you will find some disturbances, of course. But if you practice the formula time and time again, then there should be no difficulties in meditation, despite any shift in values or shift in perspectives. So that's what I would have to say. You probably have to value or revalue maybe your process of meditation. I don't know where you learn meditation, but very often what passes for meditation is not in fact meditation. It may well be preparation for a journey or a flight above the clouds called meditation. In the 8 steps that Patanjali lays out for us, meditation is number 7. And then the question is, did you do numbers 1 to 6? And if those are missing, then number 7 is nigh well impossible.
In your video this morning, which I think you had up a while ago as well, about the 2 bears, right? And I watched it a few times, and I know you referred to this in your talk just now in relation to relationship, but what struck me was because we took the bus to Belfast today and I had an hour to reflect on that, and I was thinking the mummy bear stood at the top and the baby bear fell down and she got up, and then she fell down and she got up, and then she fell down a huge amount, which was really dangerous, almost into the waterfalls. And the mummy bear didn't go down and carry her up the avalanche. The mummy bear stood at the top, very courageous, I have to say. And yeah, encouraged her and empowered her and enabled her to go to the top. But I think, if it was me, I probably would have went down and picked her up and brought her to the top. But that mummy bear was so
Very wise.
brave and wise. And that has stayed with me all day, Swamiji.
So thank you for that, Swami.
Yes, that's a very powerful video. That's the point. You can see that the mother bear represents our personal parent God, or our highest ideal, our highest self. That remains at the top, but there's all the faith and confidence in the bear, in the baby bear, in the cub, and there's all the determination necessary from the cub. And so with encouragement and so on, because there's really no danger if we have all the tools available, which we have, of purity and persistence and patience, and the bear will get to the top. What's driving the baby bear is the wish to unite with its mother. And so that yearning, that desire, that great strong resolve has to be there, without which we can give up and slide down to the bottom. So we are our own best friend, our own worst enemy. That quote you're familiar with from Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter. We can raise the mind up by ourselves or lower it. It's up to us. But we have the capacity, and the mother doesn't abandon us, but nor does it come down. It wants us to exert our own self-effort and the qualities that are given to us. In reality, of course, if the mother bear had gone down, the mother bear would also have difficulty and slid down into the abyss. So that didn't happen. Very glad, anyway, that patience and persistence paid off, and the bears were united and ran off nicely together. It's a beautiful video, there's no doubt. Yeah.
I know that was lovely. I couldn't wait to see until the baby bear made it to the top. That was wonderful.
We had an idea it was coming, but it was lovely to see.
Thank you for explaining that, Swami. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
All good, all good. Well, if there are no further questions, we can leave it at that for this evening. I may take one more question if there is one.
Yes, Swami. I don't want to bother you, but to disturb you. But maybe it's a question of words. But you say you are always saying we should not say it's not a pity. It's not a pity. But in French, the word pity. If you have no pity about people, about facts, about things, it's not possible to have love. So maybe it's a there is always also a song from George Harrison, the Beatles. Isn't it a pity? And it means we need to understand with love, with heart. So when you say, for me, when you say we shouldn't say it's not a pity, it's difficult to get it.
Yes, I understand the difficulty in the English-French differences of words. But really, most of the pity that we have is self-pity. When you really analyze it and boil it down, it's actually self-pity. And we wish that the world was a better place for us. We could put easily in brackets, for us. So that is one of the things. Now, could the world be a better place? Well, what a pity that the world is not a better place. But pity in the sense of compassion is something different, of course. So it's not that we don't have pity for somebody else, but it's for a situation. We should not have a pity for a situation. We should have pity in the sense of compassion for another person, no doubt. But isn't it much better to say, what a glory, what a glory? Why can't we say it? Because we don't see the glory. When we see the glory, then we can say, what a glory, what a glory. Because what a pity in that sense, in the sense I'm meaning it, is to do with the past, not to do with the future, or not to do with the present moment even. What a glory is this present moment, and what a glory that glory carries through to make the future glorious also. Why don't we see the world as God sees it? God saw the world and made it good, and saw that it was good. We should not see it as bad or in any other way. We should not see it as defective. What a horrible world. One of our devotees, their dog died. Very old dog, but also suffering. And I said, since the dog had been petted and was in the company of holy people and swamis, it'll be born as a human. And this devotee said, oh, what a pity. Thinking that to be born as a human is bad. No, to be born a human is the greatest opportunity we have for our growth, development, and the unfolding of our perfection from within. We can only do it with the human resources of body and mind. So what a glory it is. What a glory that you have this equipment. What a glory that you are born like this after many, many, many births, countless births, till you got to this point. And the Lord of the universe is saying, come on, here's our human life. Will you not use it? Will you not use it for the good? Will you not make sure that you explore your own nature to your very depths? Will you not discover that inner treasure that is within you, that kingdom of heaven that is within? You can only do it by exploring it with the human body and mind together, both. And they are perfectly equipped to discover it. So make use of it. Don't waste anything. Try to purchase your one-way ticket to freedom. Don't try and make a return ticket. All right. So we say good night to all of you.